Hi, Angie Mahar here. So many of you out there in all the different iterations and places, because you've been in a relationship or you are in a relationship with someone with BPD, or wherever you are in your experience with somebody with BPD. And if you're wanting them back, you're recycling the relationship breakup, and you just can't stop ruminating, and you've lost yourself, and whether you're going back for more or you're not, what's really going on, and why can't you make this work? Wherever you are with that borderline in your life today, you're probably in a lot of pain, and for some people it could be a year or two or multiple years away from the relationship with the person with BPD, but they haven't been able to go no contact or work towards that, break this betrayal bond, and heal your codependence. There's nothing that you could have done, nothing you can do now will make the relationship work. You can't help the borderline, you can't fix the borderline, you can't change him, you can't rescue him. Emotionally, what does it mean for you? This person came along, and some people say you get seduced into a lot of men believe they're seduced into the relationship. Maybe some women do too. I don't know if that's really what happens, but if that's what you experience, is how it feels for you, it's probably what's most important to you right now, for you right now. So many people have codependency to one degree or another. They're in these relationships with people with BPD because you had a voracious emotional hunger to be seen and heard. Some unmet needs from your childhood that probably are in your unconscious, or may still be, because people file those things away. And then you go about your life and you're trying to have relationships, and no matter what you do, no matter how much you self-sacrifice, no matter how much you try to please them, no matter how much you try to give them, help them, capitulate to them, roll with all of their changeability and mood swings and either silent treatment or rage and all of this stuff and the emotional roller coaster and the chaos, and you're even extending your physical health in these situations too, whether you realize it or not, because there's a lot of different health challenges we can have, right? Obviously, I'm having this medical, weight gain health challenge, but the thing is different about my health challenge right now, and I'm doing really well aside from the obvious. Everything else is still, all my stuff is good. Blood pressure is low, blah, 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 okay? So just so people know. Anybody that, because I get some emails. Emails if people are concerned. So I'm doing really well in spite of the size that I am right now and whatever. That you need to understand that what happened in the beginning, and people do know this, but you need to work with somebody, maybe like me, if you resonate with me, that you can really learn what the borderline presented to you in the idealization, what that was really about, and why you so were hungry for that. Because healthier people, with all due respect and compassion, I don't mean to be comparing people this way, healthier people, if they meet a person with BPD that's doing the idealization and whatnot, they go, whoa, what is this? Like, they back away because it's too much, too fast, too intense. But when you're somebody who maybe isn't consciously aware of how you've been hurt in childhood, and you have codependency, and it doesn't mean the same thing for everybody with codependency, you're maybe unaware of how much you need what that borderline seems to be offering you. The idealization phase is just people with BPD trying to, in their own codependency as well as BPD, people please you and mirror you. And then you as a codependent, you've got some moodiness you're carrying from your childhood. For some people it's severe, for some people it's moderate. But there is a tie back to you getting into this relationship and being wowed by that idealization. And maybe some people would say, how could I not be wowed by it? And the intensity of physical relations that would come quickly and often with all of that, until sometimes in devaluation, that major split to devaluation, or even micro splits prior to that, a lot of that hyper wonderful physical intimacy, etc., physical relations can go away just as quickly as it's like all intense. You get this all intense, super into you, mirroring you person, and that's just, it feels great. I mean, because you have, I mean, I shouldn't say it feels great just because you have these unmet needs from your childhood. No, it feels great in a lot of other ways anyway. People with BPD are moving really quickly, right? Emotions. When they meet you and then they want you, and then They fear of abandonment, you know, all that's driving people with BP, and they're not always consciously aware of it. So you kind of smack together because you have needs and they're doing this and this is all outstanding and fantastic feeling. But there can be so many things going on in the idealization phase that you're going to have to learn to confront, to deal with, to take into a healing recovery process after the devaluation, or if you've already been ghosted, you're not sure if it's a final discard, you're in a limbo place, on, off. Because what felt so great back then, hey, I've listened to clients for 33 years. I believe people when they tell me how great it was and how wonderful it was and how great it all felt, not just the physical relation, everything. But the point is there was other things happening in there that you couldn't realize at that time.
If you're not subscribed to this channel, please do subscribe, hit the notification bell, hit all so you'll be notified of every upload that I put up to the channel. And please don't forget to like the videos, or you might have a question, comments to help the channel to grow and be found by others in the mysterious YouTube algorithm. And if you resonate with my content and you find it helpful, please remember to like, subscribe, and also share my videos to help support the channel and the algorithm so that more people like yourself can find this channel and my information.
That were going to be the wounds that you might now know that you have, but you're not still sure how to cope. And so many people are rushing to get the borderline back because you really just want to get out of the agony you're in. And that's understandable. But I would suggest facing the adversity of that agony and getting help, working with someone, trying to get to a process of no contact, or if there's children or a child involved, low contact, but self-care, self-focus, and self-healing. No matter what you did, no matter how much you gave, you might be in the rumination right now, in the on and off, or maybe they're discarded and they're gone and you're trying to cope and you can't stop ruminating and you can't stop thinking about, well, if I just did this, or if I just did that, if only I didn't say this, or if only I'd said that, or if I had it to do over again, well, now I know so much more about BPD, so I would do this instead of that. Wouldn't do this, and I wouldn't say that. I would say this way instead of that way. I just want you to know you need to take really deep breaths, and you need to learn how to stop the rumination and stop these thoughts that are your inner critic going back to something else in your life, as well as maybe if the BPD relationship is over, on, off again, whatever the case, and you're in this agony and the rumination and the self-doubt because maybe you don't realize yet that you don't really know yourself fully, as in you are not an integrated human being with codependency because you have a wounded inner child who's still back in your childhood. And that's just a part of self that isn't in the here and now with you, and that motivated so much of you, and maybe still is motivating so much of you being pursuing back the borderline, pursuing back this person. Well, how you got into the whole thing in the first place, really, to tell you the truth. So the bottom line is there's nothing. All the ruminating, all the rethinking, all the second guessing, all the doubting yourself, all the horrible interjected from the BPD person or ex, and or probably a parent or someone in your family in your childhood, all these internal interjected negative core beliefs inside yourself that you don't feel worthy, you don't feel deserving, you don't have self-esteem or really low self-esteem. You need to externally get validation in your own codependent way, which you're probably not that consciously aware of. All of this just points to the reality that these relationships are impossible, largely because of the wounded nature and the arrested emotional development and the lack of self in the borderline, but also because of some of your wounds. It's primarily the borderline. But the other thing is, this will be the best learning opportunity of your life when you can get through it and learn to cope with it step by step. But the going back and the going back and the pursuing that some people on YouTube are actually recommending, and they want to, quote, help you with it. And oh, please, I hope you don't go there, because you know you're just going to you get the ex back, you get the same situation back over and over. And the borderline cycles to splitting, to devaluation, they don't re-idealize you, and those cycles just speed up, and you're just going to be thrown to the curb faster and faster and faster, and you will be losing yourself. And the stress that I mentioned earlier, didn't finish the sentence, sorry, it's going to set off your amygdala and the fear center in your brain, and it's going to set off the flight, fight, or fawn freeze responses. And so when you get into these stressful situations where you just feel like you can't be without this person, no matter what iteration of the cycle you're in or whatever the case, then this is really traumatizing your nervous system is the best way I can put it. And that might be also a multi-layered reality depending on what happened in your childhood. Because for some people, some adverse experience. For some people, it's much more core, deeper woundedness. So the key thing is that you need to know these relationships are not going to work out. People with BPD have to go to their own. They have to seek treatment from efficacious modalities. It can take 8 to 16 years. Some aren't going to get through it no matter how hard they try, unfortunately. Many aren't even going to choose it. And lots of people are trying to hang in with a borderline on and off and whatever to try to get them back because they're in therapy, but they're often all not in, many, not all, are not in therapy that can possibly help them with what their core issues are. And if they don't know they have BPD, or if they're denying they have BPD, or it's not really, you don't know for sure, but all the patterns are there, you have to surrender to the helplessness that really is happening for you, that you can't make this work. And the harder you try to make it work, the more you lose yourself. And the really important thing to take away here is, and none of this is your fault. You have responsibility to take care of yourself. You have responsibility to figure out what's going on enough to get yourself out of there and get help. But you're not responsible for how people with BPD can't do relationships. Don't attach to people and don't love. And if they love you at all, they love you like a small child. And you are their shiny toy until they get what they want and then they don't want what they've got anymore. And it's not about you, and it's not a reflection on you. And even if you are a perfect man or a perfect woman, I guarantee you, with these untreated people with BPD patterns of not even diagnosed or not treated, there's no way you can change the trajectory of what's happening or go back, redo, and change what happened. People with BPD, their repetition, compulsion, repeating cycles will not change pretty much at all unless until they get significant treatment. So don't blame yourself. Don't second guess yourself. Try to work with somebody to get out of the rumination and all the self-doubt, because you now have an inflamed internal critic, probably from childhood, but also from maybe the person with BPD. What they've said to you, how you've absorbed that, and how it's replacing what part of yourself that you did know, relationally, emotionally, right? You might be doing fine in your career, but you might be having a hard time focusing on anything but that borderline right now. What's happening, or if it's over, or how you're going to get them back. It has nothing to do with you, why these relationships are impossible. And you need to know that. And I hope that you can hear me. Some people do, and some people take longer. But you need to know that it's not your fault that these relationships fail, that you get ghosted and discarded like the no longer shiny toy that you really represented unconsciously to the untreated or undiagnosed and untreated person with borderline personality disorder. These relationships start when you get in the idealization and everything. The relationship, unbeknownst to you right then and there, as it begins and it's wonderful, it's already starting to end. These are inevitable repetition compulsion cycles that people with BPD cannot stop. They're not aware of, they're not doing everything intentionally. They may do some things intentionally. But please, if you don't know this already, and I have clients who tell me they listen back to certain videos because they helped. I hope this might be helpful for you to listen back. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. You couldn't have said anything different, done anything different, done something differently. Oh, you can't speak something. You were set up, not necessarily consciously, by a person with BPD who's looking for the mother that they never had, who never nurtured them, never soothed them, never loved them, never helped them to grow to be an individual who has a self. People with BPD don't know the difference between self and other. So no matter if you were even perfect, you would not be able to make it work with the borderline. And if nothing else today, I hope this message reaches you to help you to start to reframe all your doubts, all your what ifs, if onlys, and really take a hard look. And I'm not here to work with you if you'd like some help with this. Take a hard look at what are you, if you are still pursuing the X-Pac or listening to the new kids on the block, the little coachies who don't know what they're talking about, really dangerous stuff. You need to really understand that to go back and to try to do over and to think they're going to change and something and you're going to get it better and you're going to do, it's not realistic. It doesn't make sense. But matters of the heart and the agony of it all is quite understandable. But you need to get into your own healing recovery process now, because no matter where you're at with all of this, it's not going to work. You're not going to get a do-over. You're not going to have a magical getting back together. You can't go to couples counseling to solve the problem. And if you go to your therapy and they go to theirs might take 8 to 16 to 12, 8 years to 10 years to 12 years to 16 years. And yours might be like, all told, if you can get no contact and move on, let a breakup be, and stop trying to pursue the ex, because that you're trying to pursue something from your past through your ex with BPD as well. And the thing is, when you can start to learn to cope with the process of changing this for yourself, then you can really break free from the betrayal bond. And then you can calm your nervous system down. And then you can heal from the relationship, heal the codependency. You don't need closure. You don't need anything from them. You need to know much more about who you are and how to love you, how to self-partner with you.